What's going on, everybody? It's EricRayweather back here with some more Madden 20 news. EA Sports just did a live stream and they unveiled a lot of new things for Madden 20 that's going to be in the game at launch, things that they haven't talked about yet, and they also went over things that they changed from the beta that was a month ago. So we have some new changes coming to franchise mode that'll be in at launch, and also some updates coming a little bit after launch, like fifth-year options for the rookies, which is something a lot of people were asking about. They also made changes to gameplay. They tweaked some things. They also added some new features to gameplay, which I'm going to go over. So I'm going to actually cut to some of the clips of the developers talking about the changes, and then I'll come back here and give my thoughts on it. But if you are new, really quickly, and if you're looking out for the Madden 20 gameplay, a lot of people have been asking, I will be dropping it early next week. It'll be a few days before EA Access goes live. I thought I'd be able to drop it earlier than that, but that's when EA is allowing us to release it. So if you're on the lookout for that, make sure to subscribe, hit the bell icon so that you don't miss those videos when they go live. Alright, let's get into the new changes.
Talk to me a little about player rating stretch and kind of what was done this year from that regard.
So the player rating stretch, we raised the ceiling on our attributes that we were using, and we lowered the floor, and we went across every single attribute from every single player for each position, and we reevaluated everybody out, and we separated them to really separate the elite from the very good from the good from the average to the backups, etc., to really make each tier of players stand out from one another.
Got it. Okay.
And then that also impacted the overall formulas on top of that. So I think the best example we used is last year the highest pass block for a right tackle was 88. This year it is 95. So we went 7 up on the right tackle and pass block. We also went low on the low end to really help separate guys out, because there was a lot of clumping together, and we wanted to really make each player feel different based on what their ratings represent and really separate that out.
But he's like, please update the contract structures in the game. In the franchise deep dive, you claim to put work into making contracts line up with the real NFL, but in reality, there's kind of some things missing, like, fifth-year options for first-round picks, guaranteed money restructuring, player team options for certain years in the deals. Are we going to do anything in regards to that? So I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the way that we are representing guaranteed money right now is through signing bonus. It's not exactly a one-to-one, because there's guaranteed salary versus signing bonus, which is always guaranteed as well for players. But that's kind of the way that we're supplementing it right now in a year that we didn't have the chance to add additional resources on the franchise side to improve that area. Regarding fifth-year options for first-round picks, it is confirmed that it will be a scenario that we are going to be releasing in a future title update this year. So that is something very big, getting that fifth-year option for first-round rookies. And the other things, the guarantee money structures and various options, they're things that we definitely want and we're going to look into in the future as well.
He was talking about, when simulating games, QBs do not record rushing stats. So
yes.
What are we doing in that space?
We're looking into it. It really ties into our Super Sim engine. It's a very large and complex system, but we are looking into it because it is an area that we know is a big deal, especially for guys like Lamar Jackson, like Marcus Mariota, et cetera, Deshaun Watson, to have these types of rushing stats, because it's a huge part of their game. We already are working on things to address it in standard gameplay. We're also looking into it in the Super Sim engine as well.
He talked about when he played the Madden 20 closed beta that it felt like there was a lack of depth in franchise and just in general. Can you talk a little bit about that and what we're doing to kind of add more depth in that space?
Well, we're adding a lot of scenarios to the game for launch, and we're going to be adding continuous development scenarios throughout the entire course of the year. And I think that's really an area that we can expand upon, that type of living world, and having different people approach you, really make it feel like you're part of a team, that different members of your organization are interacting with you, and all the different things that come with it. Could be players, could be coaches, etc., to really help enhance that experience and add more diversity to the content that we had in the beta, because it was a small snippet of what is to come.
For sure. Can you assign X Factor abilities to your creative player in franchise?
Absolutely. So we have different paths for that, especially through Face of the Franchise, where in Face of the Franchise, you can equip your abilities at any given point. However many slots that you have unlocked, you can mix and match, and you can really have that type of freedom. And we want to make that My Player experience really stand out and let you have that customization and freedom relative to the standard franchise mode, where whatever they earn is what they will have. but it's based on archetype and other factors involved.
Okay. In Connected Franchise, is Superstar X Factor something you can earn, or do you have to be drafted with it?
Both, actually.
Okay.
So you can earn the abilities through performance, through awards, different things of that nature. We removed the ability to lose dev trait this year, so you'll have guys going up. It's not exactly easy to get the new dev traits, which is why we felt comfortable not having the regression down in dev trait, and we don't think it's going to oversaturate the league. But you will also be able to draft players with Superstar or Superstar X Factor abilities. We added a little bit of Fog of War to the abilities, or to the dev traits in the draft. So if you have Star, Superstar, or Superstar X Factor, you will have a hidden development trait that you have to play a certain number of snaps with that rookie to then unlock what their dev trait is.
Okay.
So you know that you have something that's above normal dev trait, and then you find out how special these guys truly are after you really experience them as a player.
Okay, good stuff.
I just want to talk a little bit about the rating stretch relative to franchise.
Okay, yeah, go for it.
So first off, the one thing that you should really look at is the rank at the position. So the way that we have our contract system set up and the way that teams are built is with all the ratings lower, rookies might be below established veterans. But the lower the overall and the younger the player, the faster they will progress. So in theory, if they are focus trained, which they will be because they are newly drafted players, they're going to rise up above low-level veterans who they will then surpass and get the playing time on. And for the contracts, it's based on the overall of the player's contract right then.
Okay.
So if you have someone who's an 82 overall who gets, let's say Carson Wentz being tied for the 12th best quarterback, and he has a $180 million contract, that number will help influence other 82 overall quarterbacks in the future.
Wow.
So you take the entire contract structure, it's the contract relative to the overall, and that really helps shape the contract structures across the board. So even though everything's scaled down, we also are taking that into account with our progression, our regression, and with our contract system.
That's great stuff, man.
So that was all of the franchise stuff there from Swami. One of the things I really liked was the fact that they said they are going to be bringing fifth-year options to the game. I think it's going to be somewhat via the scenario engine, so maybe like if your player qualifies for that, the GM will approach you or something of that nature, so that's cool. I'm also glad to hear that the scenario engine in the beta was just a small sample, because I'm on record in multiple videos of saying I felt that the scenario engine in the beta was extremely bland. It got old very quick. I saw the potential that it had, but it definitely wasn't anywhere close to the potential that it did have. So it's good to hear, at least at launch, that it's going to be at least more in depth than what it was in the beta, and I know they are still planning to update it throughout the year with title updates, which is cool for franchise mode players. And also hearing the regression and progression, at least relative to the rookies, because the rookies are coming in very low this year, and I saw a lot of people worried that these guys are never going to progress at the rate to overtake the lower rated veteran players. But it sounds like those guys will, relative to their rating and age and their dev trait, they will actually progress quickly, at least enough to surpass those low-rated veteran guys and actually get more playing time and become a starter. So those are all good things to hear. Next up, we're going to go into some of the more gameplay and on-field changes, and then I'll see you back here to give my opinion on everything.
You got these Superstar X Factors in game now. You got these Superstar abilities. It's really confusing because you get in there and you don't exactly know what's going on. There's just all this stuff. You don't know how to get them in the zone. You don't know how to get them out of the zone. People are pausing the game. When they're pausing the game, it takes you out of your flow. Our whole idea is like fast to fun, get people engaged, but it's just when you don't have the information, it's a very slow and aggravating process. What did you guys do to address that?
And then during game, which is we wanted to try to find a more active place to do that, and that's where we came up with the concept of X Factor Vision, which we have up on the screen now. And so the concept here is we've taken Coach Cam on right trigger, and we've swapped out the coach wheel with an X Factor Vision wheel, for lack of a better word. And what you can do with the right stick is you can scroll between the two teams on offense and defense, and we'll highlight the different players as you move across. So if you only have one X Factor or Superstar on your team, there'll only be one up there, but the feature will support up to 11. So like when we had the Pro Bowl where we had a bazillion icons and everybody's really confused and unsure of what each person does, we can support a max out thing. But for balance and whatnot, we're trying to keep it around 3 players per side of the ball, just to make those guys feel really impactful and not water down the point of this feature.
So this is a really big change for the game. This was not actually in the beta. This has been added since. When you're on the field now, you can press the right trigger and you can see who on your side of the ball has abilities, who has X factors, as well as who on the other side of the ball has them, because you might forget in game, which team has which abilities, especially your opponent's teams. But it also tells you for the X factor players what they have to do to get in the zone. So you might see like your wide receiver needs 3 catches of 30 plus yards or more, and it'll tell you he's 0 for 3 or he's 1 out of 3. So you know how close he is or how far he has to go to get in the zone. But even more importantly for your opponent's players, how close they are to getting in the zone, so you can adjust accordingly. Now the big thing with the change is it's on the right trigger, which used to be, kind of the coaching options to show your play art and things like that. That is now moved over to the left trigger. So I don't think that's that crazy of a change, because it's just switching triggers and it's pre-play. That's something I think will be easy to adjust to. The big change, however, is on the defensive line and the linebacker adjustments, because those used to be on the bumpers, like the LB, RB, or if you're on PlayStation, L1, R1. You would press those buttons and then you would use like the joystick to shift them left, right, up, or down. Now that's all on the D-pad. So if you want to like shift your linebackers any which way, you would press right on the D-pad, and then you would press right again if you want to shift them right, or you would press up if you want to spread them out. Same with the D-line. You would press like left on the D-pad, and then if you want to pinch them, you would press down. Now this is the one that's kind of scary, because this is a really big pre-play change, and we have that muscle memory down. So anytime you're changing the controller, that could cause some pushback. When I saw this, I actually picked up my controller because I was like, man, let me see what this is going to feel like. And it's going to definitely take an adjustment, but when I was kind of just messing around with it to get a feel for it, I think it might actually be easier once you do get used to it, because everything's kind of in one spot now. Like if you want to just shift your linebackers right, you just press right, and they're shifted. Whereas before you have to press, you're kind of in 2 different spots on the controller, pressing a trigger and then using the joystick or the D-pad. If you want to pinch your D-line, you just press left down. So I think actually once you get used to it, it could be quicker, but that's going to still be an adjustment, and we'll have to see how that plays out. But specifically the coach cam for X Factors, when you talk about like Ultimate Team, it's going to be really important, because you're going to have the freedom to put different types of abilities on players in Ultimate Team based on their archetype, right? So like my Julio Jones might not have the same exact abilities as your Julio Jones, or my JJ Watt might not have the same abilities as your JJ Watt. So when I use that coach cam and pull it up, I can see exactly what abilities your guys have equipped, which is very important. So that's all from that section. Next, we're going to get into the gameplay changes and tuning with Clint Odenberg.
So let's talk about gameplay. First off, let's talk about the thing that everybody wants to know about is pass rush. What happened?
Yeah, pass rush. That's a good place to start. I'm going to look right into the camera. There was no change to pass rush. We did not tune pass rush. We didn't do anything to pass rush. It's at its exact same state that it was in the beta. But there is a new mechanic that I am introducing today that deals in that space. We now have user-controlled block and release hot routes and blue routes for tight ends. So basically, anytime you have a tight end in an inline position that's either in a 3-point stance or in a wing position, and he has a blue route, or you hot route him to a blue route, he will now be in pass block until you hit his receiver icon button, which will then release him into his route at whatever time you want. So you know exactly when he's going to go. The cool thing about that is, based on his awareness rating, that's how responsive he'll be to the button press. So if he's very low in awareness, he might be delayed when you hit the button, so he'll be a little late. And if he's really high awareness, he'll be really responsive. There is a max timer on there, so you can't just run all the way back to the end zone and then release your guy. So I would expect, between 3 and 5 seconds, there is a max timer he will eventually release. But if you run the play as you should, you can hit the button and tell him when you want to release. And this is important to the pass rush conversation, because this is a good counterbalance to the edge rush heat. If you're having trouble with that, you want to put a tight end over there and know when he's going to get out and have a little outlet. So it's a nice little tool in your tool belt to counter the edge rush, and it's the first of 2 blocking mechanics that we will be launching this year. The second one I can't talk about today will be coming in a title update.
Okay, cool. Let's talk about man coverage. So we did see some feedback on that. What do we do in the area of man coverage?
Man coverage. So even though there was some people saying don't change man coverage, we did make a few very surgical updates to man coverage. There was not any global tuning or nothing that would impact it as a whole. What we did do is tune the cut moves for wide receivers on post and corner routes, which are typically man-beating routes. We tuned those to be more effective for receivers who hold those abilities that give them special cuts on corners and posts. And then we also did some work to make man coverage defenders react more appropriately to the receiver cut immediately following a press animation.
Okay.
Especially on outbreaking routes.
How about zone? What do we do in zone?
No change.
Okay. All right.
So that was most of the important talking points they went over. I'm glad that they didn't touch the pass rush. Once you get used to it a few games in, you'll realize that it's honestly better for the game. You just have to kind of get the ball out quicker now, but it makes those really good pass rushers stand out. I am really glad to hear that they added the feature on the offensive side of the ball to control the check and release routes for the tight ends, because those routes are really good, but in years past, a lot of times they would stay in way too long to block. So now I'm glad that I have the freedom to say, hey, I want you to release into your route right now. Specifically because the pass rush is better now, this is a good thing on the offensive side to counter that. I can say, hey, let me leave my tight end in to block. I can get my hand on that edge rusher or maybe an edge blitzer, hold him up for a second, and then I can release him into the open space and get my easy yard. So I like to hear that. They also touched on the stiff arm, saying that in the beta, the stiff arm was really powerful, specifically with the running backs that had a stiff arm ability. They did add a stamina hit to that. So if you pull off a successful stiff arm, that's going to drain a good bit of your stamina, as it should. So you're not going to be able to pull off consecutive successful stiff arms or necessarily pull away from the entire defense after you do, pull off a successful stiff arm. So that was good to hear. They also talked about RPOs, saying a lot of people were saying they were getting illegal man downfield penalties, but that's actually how it was supposed to happen. An RPO is a bang bang play, so you really need to either hand off or pass almost immediately. If you hold the ball too long, the offensive linemen are going to get downfield because they have to be in run block mode, because there's a chance you will hand it off. So you have to make that really quick decision. If you hold it a second too long, they're going to get far downfield and you will get that penalty. They also said they addressed QB fumbling on simulation mode. So there was a lot of reports of QBs fumbling on QB runs and scrambles. For simulation mode, which is what franchise players play on, they reduced the fumbles because they said the balance to that is the fact that injuries are on in simulation mode for franchise. So a quarterback has a higher chance of getting injured if he takes a big hit. So they lowered the chance of actually fumbling. But on competitive mode for like online play, the QB fumbling for quarterbacks will still happen pretty often. Now, outside of that, the last thing that they did touch on was some presentation updates. There wasn't a lot done to presentation, but the really big thing that they did was to the sidelines. You're going to see a lot of different cut scenes on the sidelines now, after plays happen. They mentioned specifically how you see Odell Beckham sometimes on the sideline, throwing a tantrum, slamming his helmet. Not that he's the only guy that does that, but he's probably the guy that's most known for it lately. You're going to see certain players, especially players that have that type of trait in real life, that they do those things. You're going to see them do it in game now, slam their helmet. I actually did see that in the beta. I saw DeAndre Hopkins do it, and I wasn't sure if that was new or not, but I was like, why? Why is this guy so mad? He really slammed the heck out of his helmet. So you're going to see things like that. They showed a clip with Brady, kind of playing on the joke of the time that one of his players left him hanging on the sideline. Little things like that are in the game now. You'll see players hyping up the team and things like that. So that's a nice touch, but outside of that, presentation was pretty much untouched. They didn't do too much with it, but that's going to be all for today. Hope you enjoyed this video, found it informative. Remember, the gameplay is coming early next week. If you don't want to miss it, make sure to subscribe, turn on the bell so that you get notified when I drop those videos. And as always, I will see you guys next time.